Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our digital webinar on our digital supports that are available from the Local Enterprise Office. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time coming on this morning. For those of you who are just
Told me
joining,
he wasn't doing it.
if I could just please ask that you mute
Yes.
yourself. Great. So I suppose, look, in the world we live in today, everywhere around we can see businesses who have embraced digital technology from look buying something online to using a card reader, receiving a newsletter update, getting a digital invoice. And the reality is that if you're going to develop or grow your business, digital capability isn't just important, it's essential. And to keep up with both market demands and the needs of your consumers. And thankfully, there are supports out there from the local enterprise office that can assist with that. And we'll talk of them a little bit more. And what I'll do is I'll just share a little bit of an agenda for now in terms of what today will look like. So I will, after my introduction, pass you over to John O'Shanahan, who has kindly joined us this morning. John has a vast wealth of experience in this area. He's going to talk through both our digital for business and our grow digital supports. Um, John has vast experience. Among other accolades, he has developed a white paper on on the technology readiness of Irish small businesses for digital transformation. So you're in good hands with John. Um, he'll talk for about 25 minutes or so, and after that, you'll hear from Ciara Shine of Shine's Seafood. Who joins us from Killybegs, a little nearer afield. And she has undertaken a digital for business program recently. We'll hear her learnings and experiences from this. I'll then briefly go through the application process, and we will have a Q&A at the end for people as well. So I suppose without further ado, I'll pass you now over to, I'll stop sharing. I'll pass you over to John. And John, I will, if you want to share your presentation now.
Great. Thanks for that, Stephen. So just get organized here. So good morning, everyone. Delighted to join you this morning. And I'm supposed to talk about my favorite topic in business over the last few years. So digital in small business. I suppose before we get into anything, I would see that technology adoption, digitalization in your small business is a puzzle that every small business has to solve. If you don't know that yet, you will know that in the coming years, businesses will not survive without technology adoption. And today, we're going to try and demystify that. There may be people on at different stages. We'll go through different use cases and just try and kind of shed a little light on the area. So, in terms of the format of the presentation, a little bit about why in digitalization, the digital journey that many companies go on or may be on, and then we're going to go through a little piece on the digital for business with some use cases around that program and the Grow Digital, and then finish off with some kind of key points. A little bit of background on myself. I'm based in Limerick. I've spent over 20 years of my career working overseas and various locations abroad in manufacturing operations mainly. And our company's operated since 2014, specializing in lean and digital, but specifically in digital in the last years. So we've been working on digital and small business for around 8 years now. So well before COVID and well before the advance of digital in small business. In terms of my own background, I could consider myself to be well placed, I suppose, to advise people on digitalization. I was lucky enough to work for a multinational out of college in the 80s. It was a technology company. Funnily enough, I was in a client during the week that still has filing cabinets, but they're not so common anymore, and they will be totally outdated very shortly. We worked in the computer disc business all the way through to DVDs and all the iterations of products that came along. So I was very used to technology adoption, and also our plants and factories I worked in, they were closed by technology adoption, but we had to learn and adapt. And, we moved to the cloud. And a couple of years ago when I was putting up this slide, the AI was gone out of the slide, like I was cutting it out because it wasn't relevant, but it's very relevant today, as we all know. So in terms of then, maybe the motivation. So the big risk for small businesses that you get caught on what we call the digital divide. So the digital divide is where you're not embracing digital, and with each passing month and year, that divide gets wider. And at some point, you will not cross that. So, and we would see companies, and if you will see, hopefully your own companies are not in that position, but if you keep your eyes open with the companies that you trade with, or that you may see that from the profile of the business. Um, there's a lawnmower company I go in to get my lawnmower repaired, and the systems are like they were 50 years ago. So they are not going to cross the digital divide. It's actually too late for them. But then the key, I suppose, is for you to understand that. And while there is uncomfortableness around digital for a lot of people, you have no choice but to make sure that you cross that divide. Just in terms then of, I suppose, a little bit of background, we did some research a number of years ago, and we share this regularly. It's based on um, micro business owners in Ireland, so it's under tens. But what we'd like to talk about is the various kind of enablers and inhibitors. So when we look at the enablers, a key point is that, business owners' progressive mindset. You're running a business, you have a responsibility to be competitive, and digitalization is part of that. So if someone has to persuade you to be progressive, that's something that you have to think about. So digitalization is just another new thing that a business has to cope with, but it's a very critical element for your business. We also found that support from people like ourselves or other mentors, and I'll talk about where you can get support as we go through the talk today. So initially, people may need consultants, but mentors can come from anywhere. They could be your brother-in-law, your mother, your father, your nephew, niece, depending on your age. You can get help with technology from anywhere, not only from consultants. Then enablers were also the available training programs. And luckily in Ireland, we have excellent support programs from the Local Enterprise Office. Just to put that in perspective, if you were in the UK, those programs do not exist. So, there are some supports, but they're nothing like the supports we have in Ireland. So we're very lucky for our small businesses to have these programs. And then a really critical one that I would encourage everybody to get involved in, what we call informal business network exchanges. Go to events and talk to people that are adopting technology. Don't if you're not adopting technology, don't just interact with like-minded people. You need to find out and who is adopting technology, have a chat with them, talk to them about the journey. When you get the chance to come to events or talk to people about things, go listen, exchange, and follow up. In terms of the inhibitors then, because there are inhibitors, technology is challenging for especially for people that are not in that sector, lack of knowledge in the technology industry. And that I suppose seemingly gets more complex with each passing year as we go through all the various iterations of technologies that are out there. There's a perceived high cost to implement new technologies. And I would say that's actually not the case. Of course, people can overspend if they go about it the incorrect way, but so many technologies are very cheap or free. So that the high cost is a perception. The time investment involved in staff training, of course, there's time involved when you make changes, but the return on investment is phenomenal. When the classic example would be if you looked at the time people would have spent on manual accounts packages in the past, or manual accounts versus doing the books through an accounts package. So you have to spend time training on the accounts package, but once you do, you get all that time back and more. And then the last one is important for small businesses, the fear of failure. So particularly for the owners, what idea has someone come up with next? And we tried that, it failed. And then after a few failures, people can be a bit kind of shy of trying new things. So you have to be careful on that you make the right choices. And as well as that, you have to be prepared for setbacks. It's part of continuous improvement, it's part of learning. Just in terms then of the digital journey, and these are not the sequences that people go through, but these are some of the common kind of profiles, I suppose, we would see. So number one is stage one, basic tools only, Excel, Word, manual, everything, no accounts package. We see people like that every week. And the good news is it's never too late to start, but you cannot survive. Your business will not be competitive on basic tools only. Then next stage may be that a company has a cloud-based accounting package in plus spreadsheets. So definitely number two is better than number one. We would recommend everyone that can afford an accounts package is going with that. Whether you have an outside bookkeeper or not, get an accounts package. Step three then, or stage three, is you've started to add in some productivity tools. So, if we go back far enough, there was no Excel. Excel was a great tool, but Excel is quite old now, and there's so many other little tools, whether it's a paperless notebook, a note organizer, simple cloud-based products like Google Docs, Google Sheets, but starting to get into some of those productivity tools, like entry-level productivity tools that can support your business. That's another stage along the journey. Then you get into kind of a little bit more complexity where companies may have specialist software for their business. Would be quite common. If you're in that industry, you will know. So if off-the-shelf software is available for your business and you're not a startup, generally that's something you should be looking at because it's off-the-shelf designed for your business. They should have all of the little kind of solutions that are needed for that type of business. They can be kind of one size fits all, but generally they work very well for people like physiotherapists, dentists, florists, doctors' offices, and stuff like that. Where they don't work as well for is, little engineering company that does it different to the engineering company down the road or others all over Ireland. Then moving on up the kind of scale, you get into adding in CRM or project management. So obviously, as you go through the stages, these are building on top of having like accounts packages. So people might have a customer relationship management software, project management software, something a bit more complex. In my experience, what I see is that the younger business owners are more likely to have these kind of tools. That's what I see. It makes sense. And it's not being ageist, but people my own age or younger, or slightly younger or older, none of these tools were around when they set up their business. Whereas if you're setting up a business today, younger people, the first thing they do is look and see what can I get that's off the shelf that'll help me with project management, and they kind of skip through Excel, etc. And then this part, then like number six, this is kind of small business a story. More complex packages, integrating with multiple packages, adding in automation and AI in operations. And there are companies that are at that level. So you get within the business landscape, you will get a spectrum of people. So you get everyone from people that are at the very beginning, and then, hopefully there's less of those as we go on. And then the people at the top, they're not overly common, but there are plenty of companies that are really embracing technology at very high level. So I'm going to give a use case now. I'm going to go through some other use cases later in the presentation, but this one is an advanced use case, and it's kind of an interesting story. The company are in business 15 years, and they have been using digital systems for 12 years. Okay, they're in construction. Guy running the company left school to do a trade at junior cert. In his own admission, he is not a technical person at all when it comes to computers, but they have completely embraced technology. And in the companies we've seen, they would be the leading company we've worked with in the traditional small business sector. This isn't their most recent project, but this is a project they implemented this project over a year ago. So I'm going to talk about that. So I suppose the reason they've continued to embrace technology is 12 years ago, they implemented digital note taking with Evernote, and that changed their business. And when they saw the benefit of that, they just kept going. So they just became open to any kind of digital tools. So for this particular workflow that they had, they were getting their work orders in from some larger clients in a PDF format. And when the order comes in, the work order comes in like a purchase order, they would have to put that into their different systems. So they'd have to put it into their accounts package to generate a quote. They'd have to put it into their calendar to book the work. And they have a few other trackers like for tracking the job hours and a few other things. So this is kind of mission critical area for them. It was taking them about 25 minutes to key in one order. And they're in a business that, when there's a storm, they get literally flooded with orders, no pun intended. So storms, winds, rain, heavy rain, they get really busy. They could have 30 jobs in, and they've one person to process these jobs. And you're just basically keying data, reading a PDF, keying data. So they came to us and they said, look, can't a computer do this? Can a computer help us? Because they had such experience um, with, with digital solutions in their business. So what we worked with them on was a robotic process automation solution. So basically what it is it's like the picture. It's a computer keying the orders instead of a person. So computer is there. There's nobody sitting on the seat. If you were to look at the computer, it's literally like the invisible man. PDF comes in from the customer, it's dropped into a folder. As soon as it hits the folder, the bot sees that there's work to be done here and it does the work. So for that company, that's brought the process time down to 2 minutes. So all of a sudden, it's not only the process time, it's basically a worker that doesn't get tired, doesn't need a break, doesn't doesn't go on holidays for a month. Um, and that's not their most recent project. I won't get into that in more detail, but they're at the more advanced level. And I suppose I'm sharing that because everyone has to be aware of like what's out there. So it's not like, you know, everyone has to get started. Um, this is what a company has achieved over a long period of time, but you have to be aware of what the competition are up to, I suppose, and be aware of that this is the future. The future is going to be using technology to reduce the workload on people and getting computers to do the jobs that computers can do. And if you're not experiencing that in your business, then you need to get out and talk to people that are, because there are plenty of people that are doing that. Just in terms then of some key lessons learned, before we get into the digital for business and the grow digital, start slow, build momentum. So you need to, go step by step. If you're at the very beginning, you need to get some positive experiences in successes with projects. You need to be careful on the cost. So, try and keep the cost down and avoid kind of big bets and big subscription costs, because if they don't work, apart from the cost aspect, you get kind of badly burnt and you're less likely to continue. I spoke earlier about leveraging your network, talk to other business owners. Don't kind of rely on someone that says, oh, I love Trello, it's the best thing, you should get Trello too. You need to kind of like check with a few people that are in similar businesses if you can, and see what works for them. Ultimately, everyone needs to be creating positive experiences with digital, because once you do, it's a bit like driving a car when you're a teenager. You're walking, getting the bus, all of a sudden you get the car. There's nothing else you want to do except drive the car. And that's what you need to achieve with digital to be successful. And then finally, just on that one, bespoke solutions have a place with some businesses. It's only something to look at. Typically, maybe for companies that are at the very beginning and they're unsure of what to go for, small solutions can help them get a foot on the ladder. And then there are more complex businesses that sometimes you just need a bespoke solution that will help with that. Um, so that's kind of hopefully the motivation part. And then I'm just going to run through quickly some kind of one-page use cases, and we'll talk briefly about the Grow Digital and the Digital for Business. So the first one, the Digital for Business program. So it's 3 days support with expert digital consultant paid by Leo. This is the kind of high level summary, up to 50 staff, and analysis of systems. So in the case where business doesn't have digital systems, it would be looking at the workflows. And if they have systems, looking at what they have, and then helping the company select new solutions, or potentially optimizing existing solutions and making recommendations for the Grow Digital grant. So to get the Grow Digital grant, you have to complete the Digital for Business program first. I'm going to show, I think, 5 use cases. Each one of these would have done Digital for Business, and then the latter ones have gone on and applied for the Grow Digital voucher. So this company were doing pharma plant auditing on an international basis. They had to do all these bespoke purchase agreements for the different plants based on the requirements, and they were currently doing that in Word. They were interested in a digital system that could, just manage that better, so quicker to do, more accurate, and also filing. So the work that was done with that company was to implement a CRM and connect a digital form to generate the purchase agreements. And then the outcome of that was a paperless system that replaced Excel and Word documents and reduced the errors. So they went with Begin, which is a basic entry level, almost free CRM from Zoho. And they went from like Word to implementing Begin, combining a digital form, generating their PDFs. So that's one use case. Second one is Orthotic. I'm not sure the spelling on that, by the way, solutions provider, but they make it's kind of with the health industry, healthcare, making kind of custom shoes and stuff like that. So they had a clinic management software that they were putting orders into that and then extracting that into their Access database for internal business operations. So they had a kind of a CRM, Clinico would be like a CRM for their industry. They were taking the data out then. And what they wanted to do was avoid that kind of manual entry, like what I talked about earlier with the bot. They wanted to make the process simpler by not having it kind of dependent on a person, etc. So what we did there was created a Microsoft form for standardizing the data entry and then saving that to Excel and saving it into a database to link for for data insights. The outcome for them then was standardized data entry, all the data in one place, and they could real time track and have things like visual management to show like different statuses where orders started, completed, on hold, all that type of detail. So that's what they went from. So these guys had an off the shelf industry specific software, and there was more of an optimization with kind of connecting that into like some existing Microsoft products. So both of those were digital for business. Those were pre-Grow Digital. So I'm just going to talk then briefly about the Grow Digital Voucher. So Grow Digital Voucher is relatively new. It's a grant that you can apply for after completing the Digital for Business program. It's limited to grant funding for new off-the-shelf software subscriptions. So it's 50% of the first year subscription. There are some conditions there that you can look into later. And then there's the training. The training can match the software cost. So in other words, if you spend 1,000 on software, the training grant can match the software, and then the grant is 50% of that. So it's a few conditions around that. Max spend 10K, min spend 1K, can be applied for twice. So ideally what you're looking at there is a company does digital for business, has their eye on some new software. They get help selecting the right software or making the changes, and then the Grow Digital grant can help them to pay for that. So then just some quick use cases on the Grow Digital. So these companies would have gone on to do a Grow Digital, but they're digital for business use cases as well. So this company is a local company there, accountancy firm with more than 10 staff. They had an on-premises server for data storage. They were after a review of all their digital architecture to identify opportunities. The work done was to evaluate all the workflows, what they needed and what the current setup was. And then the outcome of that was recommending a switch to Microsoft Azure, which is like a kind of higher end infrastructure for a larger company, and the implementation of a specialist CRM for their industry. So in this particular case, the outcome of the report then will call out, what they need, how much it'll cost, and that report is used to support the Grow Digital application. The next one then is a retailer. There's lots of different use cases, but I'm just going to give a few that kind of came to mind. This particular retailer was using Intact as a brand. So they're using an Intact system for their point of sale, and then they were doing e-commerce through a WooCommerce site, okay? And they wanted to kind of upgrade the whole system. They didn't know whether to get the new e-commerce offer through Intact or what to go with. So what we did was we looked at the options with them and identified that Shopify POS and Shopify e-commerce would be a better solution for them. So it's not just a kind of soft recommendation. It's like setting it up and trialing it and getting them to a confidence level that they're happy to spend money on that, and that when they spend money on that, it's the right thing. And like in small business, a lot of the time people can spend time looking for software, spend weeks or months looking for software and making the wrong decisions. So it's to help with that. The outcome for them was they made the decision to switch to Shopify POS, save costs and provide better integration. And then they will apply for the funding through the Grow Digital grant to help with the first year subscription, the training, and the onboarding. And then the last use case then is a manufacturer, 8 staff. So they were using Excel and paper notebooks for their leads and business development. So, they actually were a retailer that started doing some manufacturing on the side, and, you know, the leads were all over the place. Like, so the salesman had an Excel sheet and someone else had an Excel sheet. There was no kind of one place for them. So they were interested in, they didn't actually know what they needed, but they were interested in, when we explained what a CRM could do for them, they were interested in a CRM. And the work done was to look at what they need, select the CRM for them and with them, and then customize that to suit the business and training and onboarding. So it's it's not enough when you look at technology to kind of, that's close enough, I'll try it, because it's quite a job for especially some of this kind of operational software. It's not like trying, a digital note-taking thing would be easy to try, but something for your operations in your business, you need to give that a good shot and make sure that it's configured correctly. The outcome for them was they went with Zoho CRM, and now they've streamlined all their customer data in one place, and they've got some little automation to improve their efficiency, just give them better insights. That particular company, once they did the program, they just kind of took it on board then themselves and ran with that. So depending on where companies are at, some people are ready. Once they've seen the package and got some basic training, they can go with that themselves. So then, oh yeah, I do have one more. Food safety expert, then 2 staff. This particular company, they're very high-end food safety providers, and what they were interested in was they have this content that they wanted to monetize. So they were doing training programs, something like we've got today, that they'd sell the program, but then, that was it. Like, it was a one-time thing. So they were looking for a learning management system that they wanted to sell packages that people could, pay a subscription into and log in and get resources, etc. So what we did was help them identify what would be the best learning management system for them. That included selecting that, arranging a demo that, we or someone else would sit in on. And then from that, they're comfortable then to make that choice and to apply for the Grow Digital application. So they're kind of 4 different kind of types. Just some kind of key takeaways or tips. Very important, like, there has to be a champion in the business. Uh, you need to look at the workflows and know what are you looking at before you select the tools. So, like, you don't select the tool and then say, would it work for my workflow? Look at what you want done and then select the tool accordingly. You have to be ready to persist despite setbacks. Change, by definition, is like, it's not totally experimental, but it's definitely not like black and white. We'll just pull the plug and do that. In terms of a few pitfalls to avoid, don't overscope it and invest in features you don't need yet. Like, keep it simple, keep it small in the beginning. Um, be careful on integrations. So sometimes in a growing company, they can start putting in lots of kind of different solutions that don't talk to each other. And then that invariably creates a problem down the road where you've got 4 or 5 things that don't talk to each other that you need to join together. Um, Resistance to change, lots of people say they want change, but they don't actually want change. So keeping an eye off that and addressing that. And, I mentioned about the guys in Cork, actually, when they talked about the bots and the automation, and they're currently very active on AI, the first thing they did was they talked to everyone and said, look, no one's losing their jobs, but you have to be ready to embrace this because the business needs this. And that's put out there very early in the process. And then using apps that are too difficult for staff to use. So you have to be careful that you don't kind of, put something in, it's quite complex, and not kind of listen to what people are saying. So sometimes when people don't use things, it's because they're not interested or they're not open to change. And sometimes it's because they're just not good apps and they're not suitable. And then finally, signing up for software and not using it. So that's really common one. We have lots of things and they're all just gathering dust and paying subscriptions and paying for costs. So if you're signing up, use it. or stop the subscription. Um, just to finish out then, I suppose strategy, depending on where you are, we would advocate a crawl, walk, run, fly. Fly is like AI automation, and you're up there and you're kind of challenging to implement things in your business. If you're at the beginning, just get started, create some positive experiences. And that's it for me. Thank you, and happy to take any questions later on if there are any. Thanks.
Thanks so much, John. A lot in there, and just to remind, we have the session recorded because there's probably a lot to digest there. No, I love the even some of the snippets I took down in terms of the networking events and going and speaking to others that have the software before you're making the investment, the digital journey, and I think we all know probably different businesses, different stages of that, or you can identify yourself at that point. Even the examples of the digital note taking, as I wrote with my biro, the irony wasn't lost on me. And even as well, just in terms of the pitfalls, don't overinvest. Just because you're getting a 50% grant, you still have to invest 50% if it's not something that you're in need of. And don't I suppose the resistance to changing that cultural challenge, which is something probably everyone will face, and having to identifying champions. I think that's really, really important. If there's somebody there that has the skill, or maybe even more importantly, the desire to take it on, perhaps that would be a really good person to champion the project. There is one question in here from Michael. Thanks for that, Michael. John, I just get you. If you are able to, he said, in the use case of the accountancy firm, could you share the figures, the actual spend, including on the Grow Digital grant, including any SaaS subscriptions and training costs?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember actually what it was. I do remember that it was not maxed out, but I think it may have been around 6,000, including the training, and then of that, they qualify for half of that. So just to clarify on that, like when you get into adding new software in your business, you could add in uh, subscription to Canva Premium, for example, or some paid subscription. As long as you meet €1,000 spend, it can be something bigger or a collection of smaller things. Could be antivirus, could be in a smaller business, might be putting in an accounts package, putting in CRM, plus putting in a subscription to Copilot or whatever that's going to be. So it really varies per company. But as you mentioned, Stephen, spend what you need, don't spend to the grant, because you will be paying the subscriptions yourself after the first year. So you get the grant for the first year. It's really to help you with that kind of where there's a need. That's the real critical thing on digital.
Mm.
It should be where there's a need, not I have to be adopting digital. It's no, what do you need to adopt digital for, and do that.
Yeah, thanks, John. Just conscious of time here and moving on. So what we might do now is we will get Kira to unmute and share her experience of digital for business. And I know you were looking on with interest there because there's a Grow Digital voucher and imminently arriving, I think, from yourself as well. And we spoke about it recently as well. So look, I'll get Kira to talk now. And again, if there's any questions, we can take some of them at the end, time permitting, or we'll save it for the Q&A session at the end.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Stephen and John. That was a very exciting insight into the program. I have done Grow Digital myself, and just a very brief background for those of you that don't know. I'm Ciara Shine. I'm one of the co-owners of Shine Seafoods based in Killybegs. We have a range of premium Irish seafood products to include Irish sardines, Irish mackerel, and Irish tuna. Now, openly, we don't do any production in Ireland. It's all outsourced. So you would kind of think, God, how could they use this program? How could we have benefited from it? We benefited massively from it. And funny listening to John there, I'm bringing in sort of like key takeaways from when I did the program. And now I'm on the next leg of it. I'm just about to implement some, not all of the recommendations that came from our mentor into the business. So we don't do an awful lot of things. We use digital to the best of our advantage. The business is run by myself, my mum and my dad. My parents are both in their sort of like late 50s, early 60s. And they have adopted to technology quite well. I remember when we started, now we're still quite a small business and it's just the three of us, but we started off I was using Word to do invoices. That quickly then moved on to using Sage, and that saved me so much time. There's still a small amount of administration that has to be done. And what I remember saying to Dad, God, we've got this digital grant and we've got a mentor and they're coming down. And he was very much like, oh God, what can we do with this? So some of the takeaways from that to try and grow our business using digital to our advantage. And one of the main things that we're about to implement, or that's the next piece of the puzzle. One of the key takeaways that came from the mentor that we used was to streamline our emailing. We use Google for our emails, but we have the one shared inbox. So I do have an email, Kira at, or a John at, or a Marianne at, but it all comes into the one inbox. It's really messy. It's not very streamlined. And we had spoken about, growing the business, employing more people. We have a visitor center now in Killybegs. Where are the booking emails going to come in for that? And it was just looking like a bit of a spider's web. So that was one of the main things that we want to change. And that is the first step that I'm going to actually use the Grow Digital grant for, is to get help in implementing a really streamlined emailing system that we can expand on for future growth, that we can all manage independently and together, and keep everything a bit more streamlined. And like that, saving time, being more saving time, cost efficiency, better use of time, all those things kind of like well linked together, or at least I believe that they are. The other thing that we were looking into was a warehouse management system. And just what John was saying there, that your mentor can help you source a system and maybe get a demo for it. We recently, on a completely separate note with Voucher Ireland, we're looking for demos for our booking systems. Maybe this grant would help with booking systems as well, or a mentor could do something like that with you. But just in this particular instance, we were dealing with Voucher Ireland and not the Leo. But the importance of a demo for something and somebody streamlining a few different options for you and saying, I think these 3 people might suit, go now with your questions and give them a demo. I was, before I did them, I was thinking, oh God, this is a waste of my time. Holy God, I went with someone completely different just by sampling it and trialing it and having a little bit of time. So the mentor that we dealt with put an awful lot of time and effort into a warehouse management system, because our system, the system we would require, would be quite small and quite niche for what we would need. Now, we're not implementing that piece at the minute. Grant or otherwise, we're not ready to jump, because a lot of parts of our business have either moved on or taken a step back when it comes to warehouse management. We're actually trying to source a proper warehouse. But just reiterating what John had said, is that you don't need to use all of this at once. You don't need a mentor to come in and say, here's this beautiful big plan. There's 20 different things in it. Go for it. You need to do what suits your business as well and what suits you at that given moment in time. There was a few other little bits that came about with regards a few things on marketing. Like, your mentor's not going to be just very specific at one thing. They're usually a vast sort of pot of knowledge. They've dealt with different companies, they've dealt with different people. And again, reiterating what John and Stephen were saying, go and talk to people that have dealt with some of these little bits and pieces and that are using different programs, or they say, well, I'm using this accounts package, but here's a few features that I don't like. And it's constantly giving you little bits and pieces that you can slowly tailor what it is you want. And just back to sort of going to events and speaking to people, last week or the week before, I can't remember now, I was at a Small Firms Association event, and it was the first time I'd ever been at like an industry event that wasn't food specific. And I know I don't know if there's many food companies on here today, but the Donegal Leo does have an awful lot of food businesses, and the Donegal Food Coast is also a big supporter of all of these initiatives as well. But it was the first time I'd been to a non-specific food event, and I probably learned more, probably learned as much, if not more, than I would have ever if I'd been to a food specific event, just from speaking to people about random little things. So the whole networking side of this, whether it's direct to your business and the digital program or not, is just invaluable. So I'm hoping now in the next week or so, I was speaking with the mentor that put the plan in place for me last year. Like, it was a year ago that I did the program, give or take. So you don't have to move very quickly on these things either. Like, take the time, go through it, see what you need. And your needs change as the program goes on. And in our case, it's changed that we're not going to do anything warehouse management related just yet. We're going to go for the more back end administration, email streamlining. And that seems like a really simple thing. But like that, if you're going to look for the future development and future growth of your business, for us, that's really, really important at this moment in time. So I probably could go on a little bit more, but I won't. I know we are time conscious. So if anyone has any questions, or if Stephen or John would like to jump in at me there.
No, thanks, Kira. That's great. And again, there's a lot in that. And again, for me, it's just the relevant examples and what was right for you and what was right for your business. The streamlined email system. I remember we actually joked after we looked at the report where one of your parents, we won't apportion any blame to anybody, may have clicked on an email, and then you go back and you're, oh, that's already read and actioned. And I know even working in teams where there was a shared email and having similar challenges, stuff that seems actually so simple, but in a fast-paced business environment such as yours, those are ever-present challenges. Great as well, even in terms of the warehouse management system, and I suppose the acknowledgement as well that you can't take everything on immediately. Um, and that it's the right time. And I suppose just for a point of clarification, after you do your digital for business program, which is the one Kira has done, and I know there's digital as grow digital, it's difficult to keep up with everything. Digital for business in the first instance, which is the consultancy piece, and then the grow digital voucher after that, once the pieces of software have been identified within the report. And just about the piece you mentioned about networking as well, really, really, really good.
Thank you for the question there from Michael. The mentor
Yeah.
came to us directly in Killybegs on two occasions from memory, but was very interactive then over phone calls and things like that as well. That answers that question.
Yes. And then Maria, in terms of the time limit applying for the grant a second time, my understanding is it's 12 months, so you would potentially play in the first instance, and then I think it's 12 months afterwards but I can seek clarification on that one as well. I just don't have it on the top of my head. Typically, most businesses will apply in one instance for both the software and the training, but again, the option is there for the second time. So look, a good question on that one. I don't see.
Stephen, maybe just to I suppose maybe comment on Kira. Thanks, Kira. It's really lovely to hear the other side, like people that have been on the journey. What I would say to people on the call is you need to find people like Kira if you're at that position. So if you're beginning and you described, Kira, your journey, but talk to people that have gone on the journey. Don't talk to people that have not started. If you haven't started, you talk to people that haven't started, you're not going to learn anything. You need to talk to people. And even especially, for example, like there are all profiles of business owners in the country, older, younger, family businesses, family, younger person taking over from the parent or vice versa. Um, Talk to people that are kind of on a similar path to you. Because that's where you're going to learn because there are challenges and there are ways through it. I would say you kind of have to learn how to adopt digital. You have to be prepared to learn. Like it's not like doing a college course, but you have to kind of accept that it's not just going to be putting in an accounts package, which is probably the easiest digitalization job that someone can do, where you go to a provider, they'll do that and put it in for you. It's a little bit more complex, but it's something you have to do.
Perfect. Thank you, John. I don't see any other questions in for now. So what I'll do is I'll proceed to the application forms and a quick run through these. I suppose a lot of this is to try and dispel, I suppose, any fears that people might have around that. We'll share my screen. Hopefully everybody is able to see this okay. So look, in terms of the application, so that in the first instance, you make contact with ourselves. I will be sharing the link to those that have joined the call. But I suppose it's important just to take note of the eligibility criteria. So as John alluded to earlier, there's the broad overview of that, but there are other things that are important as well. So look, there needs to be at least one paid employee under 50. You're not a client of another enterprise agency or within Donegal, Udras na Gaeltachta. And that's also, I think, one of the important things which sometimes can trip people up is that you're demonstrated as solvent within your financial statements applied. You are required to submit financial statements, and solvency is something. Sometimes it's an accounting error, for want of a better phrase. So essentially, you need to ensure that your current assets are greater than your current liabilities in the accounts that you submit for digital for business. So that's just something, I suppose, just as a watch out in advance, because we don't want people having gone through the application process and then they're deemed ineligible. So just moving on to the application itself. So you register on our submit system. It's like setting up an email address. It's simply you go in, you register. You then move on to the eligibility criteria. So again, it's just talking through the eligibility elements and if you would potentially be ineligible. So if you're involved in gambling, adult entertainment, primarily tobacco related products and the likes, you wouldn't be deemed eligible. Um, and the first part is just in terms of GDPR compliance. So you tick that. You have a checklist of 17 questions. What Leo are you involved in? So in this instance, we shall go for Donegal. The de minimis. So this is one that can confuse people as well. So de minimis aid is essentially grant aid you've received. Um, for the vast majority of businesses, they won't have received over 300,000 euro in the last 3 years. If you have, well done. You're obviously doing a lot of things well in your business. So in most instances, that will be a no. Your business name, just put in Donegal for now. And then you have just the questions about the promoter. And again, sometimes I know some of these wordings can trip people up a little bit. The promoter is essentially the person who's applying for this. So it's in many instances the business owner or the manager. So all of your relevant details, again, it's relatively straightforward in terms of your address. You do require tax clearance number, so tax reference number and tax clearance number. So again, those are along with your accounts are things that you need to include. The stage of the business, which is essentially before under 18 months or greater than 18 months. And again, you do need to have at least 6 months trading. You put in the date trading has commenced. The business structure, so whether you're a sole trader, a partnership, or a limited company, all of which are eligible. Some details then in terms of employment numbers and your turnover as well. And obviously, your turnover will be available from your accounts. You then talk the various sector, or the primary sector that your business is relevant for. So there's a range of different drop-down options there. A little description of the business. So again, this can be, if you have an existing website already or social media presence, you can, it doesn't have to be a huge word count. So the limit actually is 250. So it can be a short bio from your website in the first instance to have that. And then in terms of the scope, and it's just an honest assessment. Look, we've looked through a number of examples already in terms of different stages of business. I suppose the more information you can provide, or the more accurate the information, the more it helps as well in terms of us and to talk through your needs and what would be suitable, and also for the consultant then as well, who will be leading the project. So that digital champion that was referenced earlier is, I think, really, really important. Agree to report activity. So yes, no, typically most people are happy to do that. You upload your accounts. If the business is not trading for a full 12 months at that point, but greater than 6 months, you will need to provide management accounts, but accounts are required as part of the application. Back to the de minimis rather, declaration, and then you sign it, and that's that. So, if you have your accounts to hand, your tax reference number, and your other turnovers, I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be completed in probably less than half an hour. And that's the first step. That's your digital for business. So once your digital for business has been completed, the application will be received by yourselves in the local enterprise office. We will get back in touch with you. A consultant will be assigned to your business. You will then receive a report where software is identified. We try to work as well with our consultants as much as possible to make it easier for the businesses. So where that software has been identified, if there's a cost estimate as well, so it's very clear in the businesses and what a particular brand might be. So it will be off the shelf software for the Grow Digital voucher where you will be eligible for. So again, in terms of the description, it looks similar eligibility criteria as the Digital for Business, but you will have completed Digital for Business program in the last 2 years. Also useful, I suppose, just to look at the eligible software. It's off the shelf, I suppose, is probably the key. John has already alluded to as well in terms of the training piece. And then, in terms of the maximum amount of aid is up to €5,000, and that's part funded up to 50%. So not unlike the other one, and once you've applied for a few of our programs, be it the lean, this or green, it's a similar process. And if you are somewhat au fait with filling out application forms, there's nothing too onerous about something like this. So again, you go through the various stages, your details, contact details. Again, a lot of these will be you'll probably have from your last one, so it might be no harm as well. Sometimes even just to keep a separate note. Obviously, of course, doing it digitally, and saving it off so that you have this information again for the next time you're completing the form. Um, the description of your existing business. So again, that can be for like before, and then an outline of the improvements. So that will have been from your Digital for Business program, and you have information from the report there that's probably very relevant that you can include there. Where data training has commenced, structure again, as we've talked through the sector, employment numbers and turnover as before. Uh, an updated set of accounts. So it may have been one financial year to the end. So if it is a case, you'll need new ones. But if that's not, and they're still the most recent, the accounts you submitted the last time will be relevant. Again, just watching out for that solvency piece, as I mentioned. Upload your Digital for Business report. And then the different elements of software that you're looking at, and the costs and so on as well. Under €5,000, it's one quote. So for the majority of pieces of software you're looking for, one quote. So that saves a little bit of time in that instance. Agree to report activity. Um, and then in terms of you submit your quotes as well, in terms of that. So uh, once you have obtained your quotes, you submit here. You then have your declaration, sign it, send it through to ourselves. The important thing is don't purchase anything before you are approved. So that just make sure then that you will be eligible. So get your application in as once you're clear in terms of the pieces of software that you've been identified within your Digital for Business report and speaking with your consultant, speak with ourselves. I'll send on the link, get the application in, and off you go. And that is that. I see there's a couple of questions coming through. Um, so what I will do now, I'll welcome any questions that anybody has. Just give me a moment. But thank you, Barbara, for sharing the link to the application. Bridget Gallagher has thank you for that. What networks do you recommend joining? For small business starting off, you mentioned Small Firms Association. I'm familiar with Donegal Women in Business. Who else do you recommend? Actually, it's funny you mentioned that, Bridget, because we are just coming up to Local Enterprise Week, which takes place the first week of March. I would strongly recommend signing up to our newsletter, getting involved in some of those events. We will have our kick-off event on Monday afternoon. We'll have a large business summit on the Friday. There'll be a whole host of events from ourselves, ATU, Donegal ETB, and a range of different other networks. It's a great opportunity to, if you haven't already, to begin your networking journey or do it. So I would try to attend as many of those events as you can. It's a great opportunity to do so. There are Donegal Business Network. I know there's a couple of members joining today, and in addition to that, there are other networks. Letterkenny Chamber, which has a remit for across the county, not just Donegal, but there are a number there. Who else? John's comment. Yeah, the informal networks. Thanks, John. You touched upon that already. And thanks, Barbara. Again, you've already communicated there in terms of that. Philip has a question here. Does the Leo advocate specific software packages? For example, many CRM e-commerce. Has the Leo reviewed the market leaders to be in a position recommend one over another? That's actually a really, really good question. John, actually, you're possibly well enough placed to advise that as somebody who would be probably doing that piece of work.
Yeah, I suppose it is a good question. Like, I suppose CRMs are just one of the many packages out there, and there probably are, I would say at a guess, there's more than 20. And if you consider that the Leos are working with everything from a one person to up to 50, it would be very hard, I suppose, very hard to put together a list of them. And then that needs to be maintained. And then probably from the Leo side, you know, coming back, people saying, well, it's not the right one for me. So obviously people like ourselves suggest certain packages, but it's about suggesting the package that's right for the company. And there's probably more ownership on that then to limit that. And I suppose as well, there's new players come into the market. So and there's a wide range of softwares outside of CRMs. So it's really about like what there's a myriad of software out there now, and with AI coming and changing things as well, I think it would be very difficult to maintain a list. It's probably the quick answer to that.
Absolutely. I suppose if you should use another analogy, it's like I'd like to go out and buy a t-shirt or I'd like to go out and buy a jumper. It's not that far off that. It's what is specific for your needs, and that's why the digital for business consultancy beforehand is so important because it can get under the bonnet in terms of what your specific needs are and getting something that's right for you. Uh, the next one came in, Cathal, the trading online voucher has been replaced. Seem to be more useful for small business that just want a website with a booking engine or online shop. New process seems to be more complicated aimed at bigger companies. Is there no support for building a small business website? Now, we did have a feeling that that would come up. And yes, so this isn't about building a website. And technically, the trading online voucher was about building an e-commerce presence and not a website. The reality is now, Cathal, I suppose you could get a website up and running, something that's bespoke for a couple of £100 over the course of a day, and with AI and so on, and probably get it in half a day. So if it's just a website that somebody is after, um, you can get that, and then maybe as your business evolves and grows, something like digital for business is more relevant. I've had this conversation with multiple businesses. This is about much more than just getting a website. It is about digital transformation. It is about looking at what aspects of your business that can be digitized. And I can't emphasize that enough. Yes, it does. There's a level of complexity here. I get that. And I see others have said that. Um, in terms of how long it takes. Yeah, there's an application process. You have to upload accounts. But this is about getting automation in. It's about you working smarter. It's about improving your efficiency. And we've seen in numerous examples that John has presented where the benefits of digitization in your business, much more than just a website, have been able to deliver meaningful, tangible benefits to businesses. And I think that's really, really important to emphasize. John, if you have any additional comments there, welcome. Or
Yeah, like I think you touched on it there, Stephen. What we would see is that there is a trend for e-commerce sites to go more towards the platforms. They're specialists, and like websites per se have evolved over the years. So when you look at the trading online aspect, that is going more and more towards the platform anyway. And like that's coming from people that specialize in that sector. They see that trend underway where monsters like Shopify are updating all the changes that are happening with Google AdWords instantly versus kind of going through maybe bespoke websites. So I think the market's probably moving that way as well. And with AI coming, like you mentioned, generating websites, that is becoming less. And I suppose if you look at the technology from a large scale, you know, 20 years ago, people were getting computers and Excel. Then it was like going online and getting a website. Now it's like broader, it's across the business. Like, so I think that supports that direction.
yeah. I just see one additional query just from Mairead. How long does it take from start to finish to get the voucher? Because you're looking to get an e-commerce site shortly. Very, very valid point and fair question. It's as quickly as you can get an application into us, as quickly as you can meet with your digital consultant. It's up to 3 days consultancy. And you again, just mindful of the eligibility criteria. You get your report. It could happen within 3, 4 weeks potentially. It can happen in several months. It really, I suppose, depends on how quick you're able to get applications and how quick you're able to meet with your consultant and get that process running. Hope that answers your question. Barbara, thank you very much for sending on the link there in terms of our inquiries, because yes, I'm sure there's people will have many. So our inquiry form is probably the best way to get in touch with ourselves. So you can outline any specific questions or queries you can have on not just on digital, but on other supports and programs. Um, yeah, I think that are most things. If anybody else has any final questions or comments, would welcome opportunity to ask them. If not, I am conscious of time. So I don't see anything coming through, or if anybody wants to even just unmute and make a comment, if there is anything else, um, that too is fine. Okay. I think that is uh, everything then. Thank you all very much for your time, and the fact that we still have almost 30 people online shows the interest, I suppose, and the importance of this. You're all very welcome, and we hope to see digital applications coming through and improvements in business processes and automation in the not too distant future. Thank you all very much, and take care. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.